My name is Kendall Avery Brooks, and I'm 28. Last Thursday night, I was curled into the corner of our couch with my knees tucked under a throw blanket, half watching a game I didn't care about and half scrolling my phone like it was a second job. The apartment was quiet in that end-of-week way, my kind of quiet, the kind that makes you believe you finally earned peace. I'd spent most of my 20s fighting for stability, 2 promotions, a clean credit score, a place that didn't smell like someone else's mistakes. When my boyfriend, Ethan Caldwell, moved in 6 months ago, I told myself it was a reward, like the universe had finally stopped testing me. That night, he'd been out running errands after work, nothing unusual. Ethan was the type who always had a reason to be somewhere else: hardware store, gym, grabbing food for his buddy, stopping by his mom's. Little motions that made him seem busy, responsible, steady. And maybe that's why I didn't hear the danger coming until the front door opened. Not slammed, not rushed, just opened. The air changed anyway. Ethan walked in like he had a mission. Not angry, exactly. More like determined. His jaw was set, eyes too alert, like he'd rehearsed what he was about to say in the car and checked his face in the mirror to make sure it looked harmless. He didn't greet me, didn't kiss me, didn't even do the normal tired drop of keys in the bowl by the door. He just stepped inside, shut the door behind him, and stood there like the hallway was a courtroom and I was the judge. "Hey," I said, keeping my tone light because my body hadn't caught up to what my instincts already knew. "Everything okay?" He blinked like he'd forgotten lines. "Yeah, just long day." Then he smiled, too neat, too fast, and something in me tightened. But the moment didn't get to stretch because my phone buzzed with an email notification from work. Nothing important. And when I looked back up, Ethan was already walking toward the bedroom, like he couldn't stand still in the same room with me. I told myself I was being paranoid. I told myself I was tired. I told myself what every woman tells herself right before she finds out she's been made a fool of. You're overthinking. The next morning, my head felt like it had been packed with cotton and nails. Splitting headache, the kind that makes light cruel. I tried to push through my day anyway. Made it to work, sat at my desk, stared at my computer screen like it was written in a language I didn't speak. After an hour, my manager took one look at me and said, "Kendall, you're green. Go home." I didn't even argue. On the drive back, I thought about texting Ethan to tell him I was coming home early. It would have been the normal thing to do, the considerate thing. But honestly, I just wanted to get home and collapse. I wanted silence, dark curtains, a glass of water, no talking. So I didn't text. I just drove. When I pulled into our building's parking lot, I remember thinking the wind felt sharp, like it was warning me, like the day itself wanted to tell me to turn around. I walked up the stairs, fished my keys out of my bag, and stopped in front of our door. There was a key in it, not turned all the way, just sitting there, crooked in the lock. My stomach dipped. We always locked the door. Always. It was one of my things, my non-negotiables. Ethan had teased me about it when he first moved in, calling me the FBI of deadbolts. But it wasn't funny now. My hand hovered for a second before I slowly pushed the door open. Unlocked. The apartment smelled normal. Laundry detergent, the faint citrus of the candle I'd burned last night, Ethan's cologne lingering in the hallway like a ghost. And then I saw her. A woman was standing by the entryway, bent slightly forward, slipping her feet into shoes, like she was trying to move fast without looking like she was moving fast. Her hair was dark and glossy, pulled into a loose clip that made it look casually pretty. She wore leggings and a fitted jacket, like she'd dressed for an errand. Not an escape. She turned when she heard the door, and I recognized her immediately. Natalie Pierce, Ethan's ex-girlfriend, the one who meant nothing, the one who was ancient history, the one whose name used to show up in arguments like a punchline. My throat went dry. For a second, none of us moved, like the whole room held its breath. Natalie's eyes widened, and her mouth opened slightly, like she'd been caught stealing something small, something she was sure no one would miss. "Oh," she said, voice too bright. Hey." I didn't say her name. I didn't want to. Saying it would make it real in a way I wasn't ready for. I heard movement from the hallway behind her. Footsteps. Then Ethan appeared. Shirt slightly wrinkled, hair not messy enough to look innocent, not neat enough to look prepared. That in-between look of a man who got a warning half a second too late. His face changed the moment he saw me. Not shock, not guilt. Calculation. "Kendall," he said, like I was the problem that had walked in unannounced. "Babe, you're home early." I stared at him, then at her. Natalie was just leaving, he added quickly, stepping closer, like his body could block the scene from my eyes. She was picking up some old stuff. Natalie laughed, small and breathy. Yeah, just old things I left forever ago. Totally forgot. Old stuff. In my apartment, while I was at work. I looked at Natalie's hands. No bag, no box. Nothing that said, I came to collect belongings. Just a phone and car keys clenched like she'd been gripping them for dear life. Natalie started moving toward the door. I should go. Sorry, didn't know you'd be home. Ethan didn't stop her. He didn't say, wait, let's all talk. He didn't say, this looks bad, but I can explain. He let her slip out like a secret being returned to its hiding place. The door shut behind her, and the apartment went quiet in a way that felt violent. I turned slowly. Ethan's eyes were already on me, wide and careful, like he was watching an animal he'd startled. Explain, I said, and my voice surprised me. Steady, almost polite. He exhaled like I was being dramatic, like I'd interrupted something harmless, and now he had to manage my emotions. Kendall, he said, softening his tone the way men do when they want to sound reasonable. It's not what you think. Then what is it? I asked, because from where I'm standing, your ex-girlfriend was putting on her shoes by our front door. Our, he repeated, like the word itself annoyed him. I didn't miss that. She needed to grab a few things she left, he said. That's all. In our bedroom? I asked, because if I didn't say it out loud, he'd keep trying to make the lie smaller. Did she leave things in our bedroom too? His jaw tightened. Then he gave me a smile, quick, smooth, dismissive, and there it was. The look. The one that said he thought he could charm his way out of anything. He walked toward me, reached out, and brushed his thumb against my cheek like I was a child he was soothing after a nightmare. You're cute when you're jealous, he murmured. Cute. My heartbeat didn't race like it should have. It didn't even spike. It just slowed. That word landed like a hand on the back of my neck, not affectionate, controlling, like he'd found the perfect way to shrink my anger into something playful and harmless. I stared at him. Then I smiled. Just a little. Thanks, I said. His shoulders loosened instantly, relief flooding his face because he thought he'd won. Thought he'd diffused me. Thought the story was already over. He leaned in and kissed my cheek, lingering like he wanted to mark me with normalcy. See, he said. No big deal. Natalie's harmless. Ancient history. Ancient history, I echoed, tasting the words. He nodded. Don't be weird about this. I let out a soft breath, like I was processing, like I was calming down. I'm not being weird, I said gently. I'm just thinking. He patted my shoulder, pleased with himself. Good, I'm gonna shower. And then, like it was any other day, he walked down the hallway, turned on the water, and started humming. Humming, as if I hadn't just watched his past walk out of our front door. As if my home hadn't just been used like a meeting spot. As if my feelings were just something cute to pet and dismiss. I stood in the living room for a long time, staring at the deadbolt like it had betrayed me too. Then I sat down on the couch. And in the quiet, the real thought finally surfaced. Not loud, not dramatic, just cold and clear. This wasn't only about cheating. It was about disrespect. He laughed at my instincts. He called my pain cute. And if he wanted cute, then I could be cute. I could be adorable. I could be the sweetest girlfriend on earth. And while he smiled and relaxed, thinking he'd gotten away with it, I'd start paying attention. Because peace isn't something you're given. Sometimes it's something you take back. Wednesday morning, Ethan kissed my forehead like nothing had happened. Like Tuesday's unlocked door was a hallucination I'd had because of my headache. Like Natalie Pierce hadn't stood by our entryway with her shoes half on and her eyes too wide. He stood at the kitchen counter, scrolling his phone, making coffee, humming under his breath, still humming, while I watched him the way you watch a stranger who's wearing your boyfriend's face. Love you, he said casually, grabbing his keys. Love you too, I answered, because I was already learning how to act. The second the door clicked shut behind him, the apartment felt different. Not empty, exposed. I waited. Not because I thought he'd come back, but because my nervous system had learned to distrust silence. 10 minutes passed, then 15. Only when I was sure he wasn't going to reappear with a forgotten wallet or a fake smile did I stand and walk toward our bedroom. Our bedroom. That phrase used to make me feel warm, like a shared life. Now it felt like a crime scene. I opened the closet. His half was a mess. Hoodies stuffed into corners, shoes lined up with lazy confidence, like he didn't fear losing anything. My side was neat, folded, controlled. Of course it was. I was always the one trying to keep the world from tipping. I stared at the nightstand on his side of the bed. I didn't even hesitate. The drawer slid open with a soft scrape. At first, nothing. Just the usual, a phone charger, some loose change, receipts from coffee shops he swore he didn't go to, a pack of gum. Then my fingers hit something hard. A box. Small. Black. Too elegant to be random. My throat tightened as I pulled it out and opened the lid. Inside was a men's watch. Not Ethan's. I knew every cheap watch he'd bought and never worn. This one looked expensive, heavy, smooth, the kind of thing you don't just leave in a drawer by accident. I lifted it carefully and turned it over. Engraved on the back, in clean silver letters. Forever yours. N. My stomach dropped so fast it felt like gravity doubled. N. Natalie. Of course. I stood there holding it like it could burn me. For a second, I actually laughed. One sharp breath that wasn't humor, just disbelief. He hadn't even been careful. Or maybe he'd been careful enough to know I wouldn't look. Because the truth was, before yesterday, I wouldn't have. Trust makes you lazy. Trust makes you stupid. I set the watch back in the box and returned it to the drawer exactly where it had been. Then I looked up. Ethan's iPad was sitting on the dresser, screen dark. We shared passwords. We'd done that early on, like it was a cute symbol of openness. We're not like other couples, he'd said. We're solid. I picked it up and tapped the screen. His passcode worked on the first try. Of course it did. The Messages app loaded instantly, because why would he delete anything? Why would he assume I'd ever stop being the calm, forgiving woman who believed his words over her own eyes? My fingers hovered over the screen for a moment. Then I searched her name. Natalie Pierce. The thread popped up like it had been waiting for me. And there it was. Months, not weeks. Not a one-time mistake. Months of late-night texts, emojis, inside jokes, photos taken in places I recognized. Our living room lamp in the background of one. The edge of my kitchen counter in another. My mouth went dry as I scrolled. Natalie. Miss you. Ethan. Stop. You know I can't think straight when you talk like that. Natalie. Then come see me. Ethan. Can't tonight. She's home. Natalie. Tomorrow then. Coast clear? Ethan. She's at work till 6. Be there in 10. My hands started shaking, not dramatic enough to drop the iPad, but enough that I had to sit down on the edge of the bed. The bed. The one I'd made that morning, smoothing the sheets, tucking the corners like my mother taught me. Like I was building a life worth protecting. I kept scrolling, taking it all in like a slow poison. Plans disguised as casual conversation. Ethan. She thinks you were just picking up old stuff. Natalie. She looked like she wanted to cry. Ethan. She's sensitive. She'll get over it. Natalie. You're sure she won't freak out? Ethan. If she does, I'll just tell her she's being cute again. My vision blurred, not from tears. My body refused to give him that satisfaction even in private, but from the sheer violence of reading my own life reduced to a joke. I took a screenshot with my phone of the thread. Then another, and another. Every message that mattered. Every line that proved what he'd done. Evidence. Not for a court. For my sanity. Because men like Ethan don't just cheat. They rewrite reality until you feel guilty for noticing. My thumb kept scrolling until I hit the photo section. And that's when the story got worse. There were screenshots of apartment listings. New ones, recent ones. Modern buildings, 2-bedroom layouts, places with glossy kitchens and natural light. My heart pounded. Why was he looking at apartments? With her? I opened one screenshot and zoomed in. It was a conversation with a friend. Someone saved in his contacts as Piper. Ethan. Once I save enough, Natalie and I are getting our own place. Piper. What about Kendall? Ethan. I'll figure out how to break it to her without drama. She's so sensitive, LOL. Piper. You're awful. Ethan. I'm practical. She pays most of the bills anyway. Might as well let her keep the lease. I stared at the screen until the letters stopped looking like words and started looking like wounds. She pays most of the bills anyway. That one hit deep because it was true. When Ethan moved in 6 months ago, the lease stayed in my name. Not because I didn't want him on it, but because he'd had credit issues and promised he'd fix them. I'll get on it soon, he'd said, kissing my cheek. Just give me time. Time turned into months. Rent came out of my account. Utilities came out of my account. Groceries, streaming subscriptions, little emergencies, all out of my account. Ethan would transfer me his half, except half the time it was late. And the other half of the time it was, babe, can I get you next month? Things are tight. And I'd said yes, because I loved him, because I believed partnership meant being flexible. Because I didn't want to be the kind of woman who counted pennies with someone she was building a future with. Turns out he was counting, just not in the same direction. I set the iPad down slowly. Then I opened my laptop. If Ethan wanted to play games, I was going to become fluent. I pulled up my banking app, my rent payments, my Venmo history, every grocery run, every utility bill, every "I'll pay you back." I created a spreadsheet. Date, amount, description, paid by me, paid by him. It didn't take long for a pattern to become a fact. I wasn't covering a little extra. I was covering almost everything, about 80% give or take. And he was using that extra money, the money he wasn't paying, to build a new life with the woman who'd walked out of my apartment yesterday like she owned the air. I leaned back in my chair and stared at the wall. My chest felt hollow, not because I was shocked he cheated, but because he'd been so comfortable doing it, so comfortable using me, so comfortable laughing at me. That night, he came home and acted normal. He kissed me. He asked how my headache was. He suggested frozen pizza like it was romantic. He cuddled up beside me on the couch and scrolled his phone while his thumb moved faster than normal. Texting. Probably her. Probably Piper. And I smiled back. I laughed when he made a dumb joke. I let him kiss my shoulder. I played my part so well I almost scared myself. Because the truth was, something inside me had gone very still. Not numb. Not broken. Just precise. When he fell asleep, I lay in the dark with my eyes open, listening to his breathing and thinking about that engraving. Forever yours, N. Fine. He wanted to make me feel small. He wanted to turn my instincts into a punchline. I rolled onto my side and stared at the ceiling until my eyes burned. Then I made a decision. If he wanted cute, then I was going to give him the cutest week of his life. Flowers, dates, future plans, commitment, all the things he pretended to want, delivered like a gift wrapped in satin. And I was going to watch him choke on it. Because when someone underestimates you, you don't always have to scream to win. Sometimes you just have to smile and tighten the net. Thursday was when I started phase 1. I woke up before my alarm, which never happened. My body felt wired, alert, like every nerve had been promoted to a lookout tower. Ethan was still asleep beside me, mouth slightly open, arm heavy across my waist, like ownership. I lay there for a moment, studying his face. He looked peaceful. That almost made me laugh. I slid out of bed carefully, padded into the kitchen, and made coffee like it was a normal morning. I even toasted bread, real toast, not the rushed, burned kind. I wanted the apartment to smell warm, familiar, safe. Because people are most careless when they think they're safe. When Ethan finally shuffled in, rubbing his eyes, he looked surprised. "Wow," he said. "What's the occasion?" I turned with a mug in my hand and smiled at him. Not tight, not forced, just soft. "No occasion," I said. Just felt like doing something nice. His shoulders visibly relaxed. There it was, the release. Men like Ethan lived in constant fear of accountability, even if they didn't consciously know it. The moment they sensed no threat, they exhaled and went right back to themselves. He wrapped his arms around me from behind, chin resting on my shoulder. "You're the best, you know that?" I almost said I know. Instead, I said, "I've been thinking." His body stiffened for half a second. Then he laughed lightly. "Uh-oh." "Not like that," I said quickly, turning in his arms so he could see my face. "Just us, you, me." I reached up and adjusted his collar like a wife in a commercial. "I don't want us to get complacent," I continued. "I feel like I haven't been showing you how much I appreciate you." He blinked at me. "Oh," he said, "you don't have to." "I want to," I cut in gently. "You deserve that." That was the exact sentence he'd used on me when he wanted something. And it landed perfectly. That afternoon, I left work early and stopped by a florist near my office. The woman behind the counter smiled when I told her I wanted lilies. "Classic," she said. "For someone special?" "For my boyfriend," I answered. I came home with a massive bouquet. White lilies, full and dramatic, impossible to ignore. Ethan was sitting on the couch when I walked in. He stared at the flowers like they might explode. "Babe," he said, standing up. "What is this?" I handed them to him. "Just because," I said. His face split into a grin so wide it almost hurt to look at. "For real?" he asked. "You didn't have to do this." "I know," I said. "I wanted to." He kissed me, longer this time, lingering. The kind of kiss meant to reassure himself that everything was fine. He took a photo immediately. Didn't even ask. By the time he posted it to his story, I was already watching over his shoulder. Luckiest guy alive, best girlfriend ever. I didn't correct him. Friday night, I took him to dinner. Not our usual place. Not the casual spot we always said we'd go to, once money was better. I took him somewhere nice. Candlelight, Linen napkins, the kind of restaurant where the menu doesn't have prices. He raised an eyebrow when we pulled up. Kendall, he said slowly, this place is expensive. I smiled. It's fine. When the check came, I didn't hesitate. I paid with the money I usually set aside to cover the part of rent he couldn't quite manage this month. He leaned back in his chair, impressed. What's gotten into you? He asked, half joking, half suspicious. I just realized something, I said. Life's short. If you love someone, you should show it. His phone buzzed on the table between us. He glanced at it, then flipped it face down quickly. I pretended not to notice. He posted again that night. Date night. Spoiled. By Saturday morning, he was glowing. Confident. Relaxed. Secure in the belief that he'd dodged consequences and somehow upgraded his situation. That's when I introduced the next idea. Get dressed, I told him cheerful. I have a surprise. He looked intrigued. What kind of surprise? The good kind. We drove for about 15 minutes before he caught on. Wait, he said slowly. Are we apartment hunting? I nodded, eyes on the road. Remember how you said you wanted a nicer place someday? I figured we should at least look. His face went pale for half a second. Then he covered it with a laugh. Wow, that's sudden. Is it? I asked lightly. We've been living together for 6 months, 2 years together total. It's not crazy. No, he said quickly. Not crazy, just unexpected. The first apartment was beautiful. High ceilings, big windows, modern kitchen. I talked about furniture placement, about hosting friends, about how much light the bedroom got in the mornings. Ethan nodded along, but his knee bounced the entire time. So, the leasing agent asked, when are you thinking of moving? ASAP, I said without missing a beat. Ethan choked on his water. ASAP, he repeated. Like, soon? Why wait? I asked, tilting my head. Unless you have other plans. He froze. Other plans? He echoed. I smiled at him. I'm kidding. But the damage was already done. At the second apartment, he was sweating. Actually sweating. He kept checking his phone, thumbs flying when he thought I wasn't looking. I caught fragments of messages reflected faintly in the screen. Panic. Confusion. Damage control. That night, he barely touched his dinner. Everything okay? I asked, genuinely curious. Yeah, he said quickly. Just a lot at once. I reached across the table and squeezed his hand. I know, I said softly, but it's a good kind of a lot. We're building something. He nodded, but his eyes didn't agree. Later, while he showered, his phone buzzed again. I didn't pick it up. I didn't need to. I already knew exactly who was freaking out on the other end. And for the first time since Tuesday, I felt something close to satisfaction. Not because I was hurting him, but because he was finally starting to feel what I'd felt. That slow, sinking realization that the ground beneath you isn't solid after all. Sunday morning, I woke him up with breakfast in bed. That alone should have terrified him. Ethan blinked at the tray like it was a trick. Scrambled eggs, toast cut diagonally, coffee exactly the way he liked it. I even added strawberries, arranged neatly, domestic enough to feel intentional. Wow, he said, sitting up slowly. What's all this? I sat on the edge of the bed and handed him the mug. I've been thinking about us. There it was again, that microfreeze. But he smiled through it, because he always did. Okay, good thinking, I hope? It is, I said softly. The whole Natalie thing, it just made me realize something. He tensed. Not much, just enough. I know you said it was nothing, I continued quickly, touching his arm, grounding him. And I believe you, but it made me look at myself, too. His shoulders eased. I haven't been the girlfriend you deserve, I said. I've gotten comfortable. I assume you'll always be here. That's not fair. His eyes softened immediately. Relief poured into him like water into cracked soil. Kendall, you're amazing, he said. You don't need to. I want to, I interrupted gently. So I made some decisions. He swallowed. What kind of decisions? I pulled out my phone. Casual. Calm. Like this was the most normal thing in the world. I emailed the landlord, I said, about adding you to the lease. His face drained of color. You what? I nodded. I figured it's time, right? We live together. You should have security here. We have an appointment Thursday to sign the paperwork. He stared at me like I'd just announced a pregnancy. Thursday, he repeated. I smiled. I already cleared my schedule. He opened his mouth, closed it, opened it again. That's a lot, Kendall. I know, I said, squeezing his hand. But it's good. Commitment can feel heavy when you're not used to it. That word, commitment, hit him like a slap. And there's more, I added lightly, because why stop now? I pulled up another email. I also called that couples therapist your sister mentioned last year. The one you said seemed really smart. We have our first session next week. His jaw tightened. Therapy? Just to make us stronger, I said. Communication, trust, the boring grown-up stuff. He nodded, but his eyes darted toward the bathroom like he might bolt. And, I said, as if remembering something minor, I put deposits down on 2 of the apartments we toured. Silence. Dead, stunned silence. You put deposits down? He asked slowly. Nothing huge, I lied smoothly. Just enough to hold them. Both are 2-year leases, but honestly, that feels right to me. Stability. He looked like he might pass out. Kendall, he whispered, this is really fast. I tilted my head. Is it? He rubbed his face. I just thought we were, taking things day by day. We have been, I said. This is just the next day. He laughed weakly. You're intense. I smiled. You love that about me. He didn't answer. I leaned in and kissed his forehead, just like he'd done to me after dismissing my concerns. Oh, I added, standing up with the empty tray. I told my mom we'd visit next weekend. She's very excited. Why? He asked, voice tight. Well, I said lightly, she's been asking about wedding timelines. I told her we're not there yet, but it doesn't hurt to talk, right? His head snapped up. Wedding? I laughed softly. Relax, I'm not proposing to you. That earned a weak chuckle. I just think it's good to align expectations, I continued. 2 years together, living together, future stuff. He nodded slowly, eyes unfocused. When I left the room, his phone immediately started buzzing. I didn't need to look to know who it was. The next few days were chaos. Quiet, beautiful chaos. Monday morning, he hovered in the kitchen while I packed my lunch. Kendall, he said carefully, about the apartments. Maybe we should wait. I didn't look up. Why? It's just the market's crazy, financially. I smiled. Don't worry about money. I've been saving. Not true. But he didn't know that. In fact, I added, I opened a joint savings account for us. His face went green. Already transferred $5,000, I lied smoothly, for our future. He excused himself to the bathroom. I heard him throw up. Tuesday night, the doorbell rang. I answered it. Natalie stood there nervous, arms folded tightly like armor. Oh, she said, is Ethan... Perfect timing, I said cheerfully, stepping aside. Come in. Her eyes flicked past me, searching for an exit. Ethan appeared in this hallway and froze. Natalie, he said sharply, what are you doing here? She looked between us. I just wanted to talk. About last week? I asked pleasantly. We're all good. Actually, you should stay for dinner sometime. Her eyes widened. Dinner? Yeah, I said. Ethan didn't tell you? We're doing couples therapy, really focusing on building a future. I turned to him. Wasn't that okay to share, babe? He looked like he might cry. Friday's out, I added thoughtfully. That's when we're signing the lease papers. Saturday, maybe? Natalie stared at him. He stared at the floor. I should go, she said quickly. As she rushed out, she didn't look back. That night, Ethan barely slept. Wednesday morning, he sat across from me at the kitchen table, hands shaking. We need to talk, he said. I nodded. I know. He swallowed hard. Everything's moving too fast. The lease, the apartments, therapy. I leaned forward. I thought this is what you wanted. Commitment. He opened his mouth. Closed it. Almost told me. Almost confessed. Then he shook his head. You're right. I'm just overwhelmed. I smiled warmly. I get that. That night, I heard him crying quietly in the bathroom, whispering into his phone. I don't know what to do, he said. She's gone crazy. 2-year leases. Her mom. I can't... Pause. No, I haven't told her yet. Pause. I know I have to. Thursday morning arrived. Lease day. I woke early, humming while I cooked. Ethan dragged himself into the kitchen, looking hollowed out. Kendall, he said hoarsely, I need to tell you something. I set his plate down gently. After breakfast, I said. We don't want to be late. No, he snapped. Now. My heart beat steady, calm. Okay, I said, sitting down. Tell me. He took a deep breath. I've been seeing Natalie. The silence that followed felt earned. For how long? I asked. A few months, he whispered. I didn't mean for it to happen. I nodded slowly. So, when she was here Tuesday? Yes, he said, tears forming. We've been meeting when you're at work. I see, I said. I stood up, walked to the bedroom, and came back with a small box. Is this hers? I asked, placing the watch on the table. His eyes went wide. I pulled out my phone next. And these? I slid the photos across the table. The messages. The plans. The truth. You used me, I said quietly. For stability. For money. While you planned a future with your ex. That's not... Here's what's going to happen, I interrupted. You're moving out today. What? He cried. You can't just kick me out. Actually, I can, I said calmly. You're not on the lease. He stood abruptly. This is illegal. You're right, I said. You're entitled to 30 days' notice. I slid another paper toward him. But you owe me $8,500 in unpaid rent and utilities? His face collapsed. I don't have that. I know, I said. So here's my offer. You leave today. Take your things. I call it even. He stared at me, tears spilling. You planned this, he whispered. No, I said softly. You did. When he begged, I didn't move. When he called me cruel, I didn't flinch. I'm being cute, I reminded him. Remember? By noon, Natalie arrived with a truck. They loaded his things in silence. As he left, I sat on the couch, laptop open, working. The apartment felt lighter already. 3 weeks later, the apartment was quiet. Not the tense quiet that presses on your ears, waiting for the next argument, but the clean kind. The kind that lets you hear your own thoughts again. The hum of the fridge, the tick of the clock. My breathing, steady and uninterrupted. Ethan's side of the closet was empty. I hadn't rushed to fill it. Some spaces deserved to stay hollow for a while. Without his temporary shortfalls, my finances actually looked better. I stopped bracing for surprise expenses that were never really surprises. Funny how much money you have when you're no longer subsidizing someone else's double life. I went to the therapy appointment alone. The therapist listened without interrupting, nodding slowly as I laid it all out. The unlocked door, the laughter, the word cute, the planning behind my back. When I finished, she leaned forward slightly. What you did was calculated, she said, but it wasn't cruel. You didn't deceive him into harm. You gave him the commitment he claimed to want. She smiled softly. That's called consequences. Validation feels different when it comes from someone who has no reason to take your side. As for Ethan, he moved in with Natalie immediately. It lasted 5 days. Turns out she lived with 3 roommates in a cramped place that smelled like old takeout and disappointment. The fantasy collapsed the moment it required grocery lists and utility splits. He hadn't wanted a real relationship with her. He'd wanted an escape, and she hadn't wanted him. She'd wanted my apartment, my stability, my silence. He left her, or she left him, depends on who you ask. Either way, it ended fast and ugly. Natalie ended up crashing on Piper's couch. Piper started complaining within a week. History repeats when lessons aren't learned. Ethan tried to rewrite the story online. Posted about choosing love over comfort, about escaping a toxic situation. The comments were not kind. Didn't you post about having the best girlfriend ever, like a week ago? So cheating is self-growth now? Team Kendall. He deleted the post within hours. Blocked his account. Ran again. I started dating again last week. Nothing serious, just coffee, conversation, curiosity. One man insisted on splitting the bill. When I offered to pay, he smiled and said, I appreciate it, but I don't want you to feel like you owe me anything. I almost laughed. The universe does have a sense of humor. Exactly 1 month after I caught Natalie leaving my apartment, I ran into Ethan at the grocery store. He looked smaller, tired, hair unstyled, sweatpants and a hoodie that had seen better days. He was holding instant ramen and generic cereal. Kendall, he said, tentative. Hey. Hey, I answered. How are you? Good, I said honestly. He nodded, swallowing. I'm figuring things out. A pause. I'm sorry, he added. You didn't deserve any of that. No, I said calmly, I didn't. He winced. I really messed up. I threw away something good for... He stopped himself. For someone who didn't want me once things were real. That's usually how it goes, I said. I turned to leave. Kendall, he called after me. That week, the apartments, the therapy, you knew, didn't you? I looked back at him. Yes. Why didn't you just confront me? I thought about the unlocked door, the laugh, the word cute. Because you laughed at me, I said. You turned my instincts into a joke, so I showed you what happens when you underestimate someone. He didn't respond. I walked away. That night, I got a text from an unknown number. This is Natalie. Can you please talk to Ethan? He won't leave me alone. I blocked the number without replying. Not my circus. Not my monkeys. Here's the thing no one tells you. When someone shows you who they are, believe them the first time. And when they mock your pain, when they call your boundaries cute, you don't owe them grace. You owe yourself clarity. He thought he was playing chess. He was playing checkers. And I flipped the board. Cute when I'm jealous? No. Strategic when I'm disrespected. Big difference.